This is TLV1.
The Tel Aviv Review with Gilad Halpern.
Hello and welcome to the Tel Aviv Review, a program dedicated to the word, to the thought and to debate, brought to you by the Van Leer Jerusalem Institute, which promotes humanistic, democratic and liberal values in the social discourse in Israel. I'm your host, Gilad Halpern, and every week I'll be engaging in close encounters of the intellectual kind with writers and scholars, or simply people of ideas of all types and vocations who have done something to make our lives a tad more interesting. My guest today is the chair of the Department of Public Policy at Tel Aviv University, as well as the founding head of the School of Social and Policy Studies, whose current research focuses on policies pertaining to renewable energies, and that project is carried out in collaboration with the Eilat-Eilot Renewable Energy Initiative in the south of Israel. Professor Itai Sened, hello and welcome to the Tel Aviv Review.
Thank you for having me.
So just a few years ago, a huge reservoir of natural gas was discovered on the Mediterranean seabed, just a few kilometers off the Israeli shore, and still within its territorial waters. And this discovery was set to ensure Israel's energetic independence for years to come. Now, is it time for the proponents of renewable energy, which natural gas is certainly isn't, to admit defeat?
So, first of all, it is never time to admit defeat. We're not the kind, and definitely not now. The situation surrounding the issue of renewable energy is actually quite clear. It is often misunderstood in Israel, but as I told you before, I'm just coming back from St. Gallen, an international group talking about these issues, gathered there, and the situation is quite clear. We are actually past the stage of hype, and renewable energy is now settling itself down. It is sound economically, it is sound, of course, environmentally, and it is very competitive in terms of price and in terms of availability. And therefore, it is exactly the ripe time to bring it to Israel. Israel is about a decade behind the rest of the world, the rest of the developed world, and actually the developing world. It is really time to kind of do the right thing and bring it over home.
Mm-hmm. Let's take all these interesting points one by one. The fact that it's economically sound and self-sufficient is a new thing, isn't it? We always knew that it was better environmentally, but the problem is that it always cost more.
There are actually three aspects to the answer to this question. First of all, the timeline. It is actually quite correct. There is a prediction I always show when I discuss this issue, where I show that about 25 years ago, prediction by the American Department of Energy suggests that about 2015 we will reach what we call grid parity, meaning that to bring renewable energy to the grid is just as cheap as any other. And lo and behold, once in our lifetime we have seen a scientific prediction actually mature, and this is true. In 2015, a year earlier, a year later, depending on how you think about it, we have grid parity, meaning that it is just as cheap to use renewable as any other source of energy. So that's one. Mm-hmm. The second thing that is very important to appreciate is that a lot of the issues that have been brought in criticizing the introduction of renewable energy are either not for real or are not as big problems as are made to be thought of. Such as actually three. One issue against renewable energy is efficiency. When we talk about renewable energy in Israel, we talk about solar. There is some wind here, but it doesn't have huge potential. Solar is abundant and is very easy to cultivate in Israel and to work with because of our climate. Europe has introduced a lot of solar energy, and they don't have as good conditions as we do. So it's there, it's easy to get. So the three issues that people have kind of brought against it is one is the fact that we don't always have sun, which is not really a problem in Israel because we always have sun, except at night. Well, guess what? At night, we also consume a lot less energy. So if we could use solar energy for the peak hours, we are really wonderful. Then there is the issue of efficiency. It is true that the photovoltaic technology that we use now that is so cheap is not efficient. But guess what? There is so much sun that we don't need to be very efficient in using it when we want to produce energy. So this is really not an issue. It's just too much sun. So let's cultivate it inefficiently.
No, but if you need kilometers upon kilometers of receptors to make it efficient, then it is a problem, isn't it? Whereas you can just buy a few. So what do you mean by efficiency exactly?
Well, the
why is it not efficient?
The efficiency is a simple measure of how much energy gets into the photovoltaic cell and how much do you get out of it into the grid. That's a measure of it's very low with solar energy, okay? But we have so much sun that we don't need to worry about. Let's get to the space later.
Okay.
The third thing is the issue of storage. A big deal, storage, how will we store it? Well, in many cases we don't need to store it. We just need to use it. Okay, examples that we are working on right now. Let's cover all the schools in Israel with photovoltaic cells. We don't need to store it because schools are closed at night, so we don't need storage. Okay. Second of all, there are solutions to storage. It is probably not batteries. Batteries are way too expensive, but there is different ways to, for example, pump water to some heights and then let it fall. There are different ways of storing this energy. Battery as well, but a lot of other ways. If we have electric cars, we can store it in the cars. If we have batteries at home, there are a lot of ways to solve the storage problem. And again, we may not need storage because by the time we have enough renewable energy that storage becomes a problem, we will either have a solution or not expand it any further. Right now, we have 2% of electricity in Israel produced by solar energy. When we get to 20-30%, let's worry about storage.
Is it easier to store energy produced in classic methods?
Again, there are many, many ways to store this energy, and they're developing. An obvious way is to pump water up. Another way is to
No, but energy produced from fossil fuels, for example, is it easier to store it than?
It's the other way around. Especially Israel produces 60% of its electricity from coal. The problem there is the other way around. Coal constantly produces energy, and during the night we throw it away because we can't stop the plant from working. Gas is intermediate. You mentioned earlier gas. Usually most experts agree that for the foreseeable future, the solution is mixture of fuels, renewable, fossil, some mixture. The question is, what's the right mixture? Mm-hmm. For us, it's not a question. We are so far behind. Again, when you get, like in Germany, like in Switzerland that I just came back, when you get to 30% renewable, then and 30%, I don't know, nuclear and 30% natural gas, as the case may be in Israel, and 30% something else, then you start worrying about, what will we do at night? How will we store it? We are not there. Mm-hmm. Right now, we need to store, we need to produce 30. It is the most efficient and reasonable thing to do in Israel right now is to change the mix from 2% renewable to 30% renewable. You will be hard-pressed to find an expert that disagree with you.
All right, so you're an expert on public policy.
Right.
Why didn't it happen yet?
Mainly because of a combination of things. First of all, two are not very interesting, and one is a teeny bit more interesting. They're not so interesting. We all know how we form and how we develop public policy in Israel and in many other places. We just do not do the necessary preparations to do it right. We kind of we heard of the natural gas. We thought, wow, finally we have natural resources. Let's do it. We didn't think too much about it. We just went ahead with it. It's not the worst idea on the face of the earth. It's not the best idea, but we have abundant solar energy, and we need to use it. And people have not worked this beast out. They've not formed the right mechanisms to make it work. Just yesterday, there is a law passed in the Knesset that allows small producers not to pay taxes and this and that. That's just one element of what you need.
Sorry, say that again. The law that was passed in the Knesset, what did it provide for?
Facilitates significantly what a small producer of solar energy needs to do in order to be in line with the law. It has to do with you don't have to pay taxes and you don't have to be an osek moshe, meaning a declared producer with all the bureaucracy surrounding it to produce up to a certain amount.
But by small producer, you mean someone who just puts cells on the roof?
Usually, we are not yet at the point where it makes as much sense to put solar panels on the roof. What you're talking about is precisely schools, a large building. We are now covering the main library of Tel Aviv University with photovoltaic. Mm-hmm. That will be a lot easier to do with the new law. If you look at Eilat-Eilot, most of what they develop are kind of medium-sized, larger, smaller, a range, because if you want to be effective, to distinguish from efficient, that I discussed earlier, at using solar energy, you want to have, again, a range of producers. Many of them, by the way, will have to be prosumers. What makes most sense in producing and using solar energy is to be the prosumer, the producer and the user at the same time. Again, we are not at the level of a single household, but a range of houses, a large apartment building with a large roof, public buildings. But here we get to probably one of the most interesting things about solar energy and the use of solar energy. To make solar energy works, you want, in many, many cases, to be a prosumer. If you need to produce it in those large areas that you talked about, and then sell it to the grid, and then the consumer buys it from the grid, then it gets marginally economically viable. But if you cover the roof of the school with solar panels, you make money. There is no question about that.
Mm-hmm.
So
you save money.
You save money. Or you save money and you make money. We have a study now actually conducted in Israel where we distinguish the two. You save a lot of money because you don't buy electricity from the grid, but you sell the excess because the schools, mind you, close at 2. This is very peak hour. The school stops using it, but the parents keep working until 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. 5 hours of very expensive electricity dumped on the grid, that's a lot of money. Mm-hmm. So you save money, you make money. The problem and that's kind of interesting, going back to your question, the interesting part is it's very hard for large corporations to make money out of renewable energy. They can make money, but it is hard because of all the reasons that I mentioned. So it is very easy for a prosumer to make money. The kibbutzim, the moshavim, everywhere you go now in Israel, they save a lot of money. They covered all the bonds, all the...
So it's done already?
It is done, but way too little, way too late. We really have to move to the next level, moving from 2 to 3% to 30%. The Minister of Energy has kind of agreed with us up to 10 to 20%. We need to move to 30%. But
so even the Ministry of Energy is not interested in raising the percentage, the proportion of renewable energy?
The Minister of Energy, again, does not have a very clear take on this. For a while, they were pushing it a little bit. They said they'll get it up to 10%, but didn't implement the policies they said they would implement and facilitate it. They're now facilitating a little more. They're working better with the community. They are doing slightly better, but not enough. We need to do better.
What needs to be done? Is it mainly raising awareness?
What needs to be done is to put together a policy structure, like this little law that I mentioned earlier, that will facilitate all the connections between the producer, the national electricity company, the grid, the schools, the local governments. It's not very complicated. It is actually relatively easy to do, but it is not done. Again, not because anybody is being in one way or another bad or against anything. It's just not happening because...
There's no awareness. I mean, for
example... There is no know-how. There is no know-how. There's
Let's
difference.
say, hypothetically, that the headmaster of a school just down the street wants to install solar panels on the roof of the school building and make his school energetically independent, viable. Is there anything that would prevent him from doing it?
The short answer to your question is no, but there is something that he doesn't know where to begin. And that is where we are working. Eilat-Eilot has done a tremendous job at creating the mix of different technologies and showing that they can work. And that's why we work so closely with them. We take our students there, we show them, look, the technologies are here, much of it can work. Most of Eilat-Eilot is 70%, 80%. They'll get close to 100% in a couple of years. So they have shown that it can be done. What we are doing is trying to train enough people in engineering, in the policy, in the law, in how exactly what you need to do from the point where the headmaster decides, let's do it, to the point where he has his roof covered. And one of the things, for example, that I mentioned is we are covering the roof of the main library at Tel Aviv University, partially so that we know that we have it all figured out from step one to to the end.
What are the grey areas there?
First of all, there is a lot of prejudice against renewable energy, which we need to get out of the way.
That it's not reliable.
That it's not reliable, that we need storage, that it's not efficient. All of this is fine, but it doesn't matter. There is so much that we don't need to worry about efficiency. Storage we don't always need, and when we need it, we can figure things out. So all of this is prejudice against which we need to get rid of. Then there is a very intricate gray area of what do you do? You need to measure the size of the roof and put the panels in one angle or another, and then you need to do a bid, to run a bid, and what should the bid be about, and what are the parameters of the bid. This is a gray area that we are currently working very hard to train as many people as we can, as quickly as we can, because these are very good jobs. That's another thing that has to be emphasized. This sector will create a lot of really good jobs for well-educated people that can make good money working in this area. So what we are trying to do is to quickly, we are way, way far behind. The world is far behind, and we are way behind the world. We need to train a lot of people to actually enlighten this gray area, to kind of make it clear how you go from first step until it's done.
Which countries are really at the forefront of this? Which countries do you look up to when you do your research?
The best example is Germany. Germany has made it a high priority, and it's a political thing. It's just that the Green Party has always been kind of the pivotal party, and the government always had to work out deals with them. But also because they have a lot of money, and they decided way before it was economically viable to put a lot of money into this. Germany, of course, has a lot less solar than we do. People who don't like to hear what I'm saying right now, we tell you, yes, but Germany has a lot of problems. True. What happened with Germany...
A lot of what? Sorry?
A lot of problems. True. What happened with Germany is at the next stage. Germany has surpassed the 30%. And then you get into new problems such as who is going to maintain the grid? If a lot of renewable energy doesn't use the grid, doesn't want the grid, or uses the grid in ways that doesn't help the grid. So who is going to pay for the grid? It's a big question, but it is the problems that Germany is facing now is the type of problems that you get when you have done most of the work you should have. Yeah. And we're not there.
Yeah, it's first world problems, quite
after
literally.
Germany, just quickly, after Germany, we have Spain and Italy, and if you're talking about wind, it's probably Denmark. These are countries that have really reached 30%. And, strange as it may sound, Texas. Texas is doing really well. Wow. And they're doing so well because of a Republican president who was formerly the governor of Texas. He wanted energy independence.
George W. Bush.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Texas has a lot of oil, but this was not helpful at the time. And so he put tons of wind, and now he's putting a lot of solar. And Texas is doing very well in terms of the percentage of electricity produced by renewable.
So it's essentially down to the willpower of the decision makers.
And the availability and the willingness of the academic circles to put their energy into training these new... A lot of academic work wants to do the breakthrough, the scientific breakthroughs. Here you're talking about a relatively mature technology. So you're not talking about scientific breakthroughs, really. You're talking about applied science. And this is why who leads the charge, for example, at Tel Aviv University, in terms of the question you are interested in, is the Department of Public Policy rather than the engineering school. Now, we have a wonderful collaboration with the engineering school, but they want the new thing. And we just want implementation. Cover the darn schools.
All right. I hope that your call will be heard across the world and certainly across the country. Professor Itai Sened, the chair of the Department of Public Policy and the founding head of the School of Social and Policy Studies at Tel Aviv University, working on the advancement of renewable energies in collaboration with the Eilat-Eilot Renewable Energy Initiative. Thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you.
And also big thanks to the Van Leer Institute for their generous support. If you like this podcast and many more where it came from, just go to www.tlv1.fm/podcasts and take your pick. Check out our new website, telavivreview.org, and like us on Facebook. You can also follow me on Twitter at Gilad_Halpern. I tweet mainly about the review. And don't hesitate to get in touch with your comments and suggestions. Join us again next week for another edition of the Tel Aviv Review. And until then, goodbye.
הלב נצבע ובגרון מחנה והדמעות יורדות להם כמו גשם ולא רואים דבר מרוב אבק ומי יודע איך בכלל הגשם רוחות קרות הביתה נכנסות אמת מרה תופחת על פנינו ובאוויר שתיקה קשה מנשוא וערפל בצביות עינינו כל כך קשה לכתוב דמעות קשה לשאת את הדממה כל כך קשה לשיר דמעות ונתננו נחמה